I woke at 2 a.m. to my phone buzzing. On the screen, Kate in my bed, with another man. Every instinct screamed to act, but I stayed silent, cataloging each photo like evidence. By dawn, control was mine. In January 2018, I woke to the sharp buzz of my phone on the nightstand. The bedroom was still dark, the city outside muted beneath a thin layer of snow. My hand fumbled for the device, disoriented and half asleep, expecting a work email or a routine alert. Instead, an unfamiliar number filled the screen. The first image appeared almost immediately. Kate with another man, lying in a bed I thought I shared with her. The caption repeated across every photo, taunting and deliberate, mocking the very life we had built. My chest tightened, a mixture of rage and disbelief settling over me. I sat up slowly, the cold wooden floor beneath my feet grounding me as I tried to process what I was seeing. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in with every new image. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the Kate I knew with the woman in those photos. My heart pounded in a rhythm that seemed to echo in the empty apartment. I forced myself to move, to act rather than spiral, knowing that control was the only way I could salvage any part of my life. I descended the stairs carefully, my steps silent against the hardwood. The living room was empty, the silence oppressive. No sign of her anywhere. I placed the phone on the table and methodically began saving every image. Each one went to multiple locations. A secure cloud server, an external hard drive, my email. I wanted them preserved, cataloged, undeniable. The weight of time pressed in. Each passing minute felt heavier than the last, a reminder that my life, as I had known it, had already changed. Then, almost without warning, I heard the door. Kate stepped inside, careful, hesitant, as if she had practiced this moment. Her eyes widened at the sight of me, and I could see the flicker of guilt before any words were formed. I held up my phone, letting the evidence speak for itself. The room was still except for the low hum of the lamp, the faint tick of the wall clock marking a reality I could no longer deny. We were suspended in that moment, a silence thick and suffocating. I watched her, cataloging her every reaction. The way her shoulders tensed, the subtle tremor in her hand, the hesitation in her steps. The betrayal stretched between us, tangible, palpable, and there was no argument, no explanation that could bridge the chasm. The night pressed in around me, the lamp casting sharp shadows that mirrored the fractures in my life. In that long, suspended silence, I understood fully that the life I had built with her was irreparably broken. I remained still, letting the evidence, the shock, and the quiet rage settle into the room. Every breath I took was measured, deliberate, the first act of reclaiming some control over a world that had suddenly gone violently off its axis. I spent the night in the dim light of the living room, the lamp casting long shadows across the floor as I reviewed every image and message again. The glow from my laptop illuminated Kate's betrayal in sharp, unflinching detail. Each timestamp, each caption, each slight movement captured in the photos told a story I could no longer ignore. I traced the sequence of messages, noting when each had been sent, comparing it to the times she claimed to be elsewhere. My mind worked methodically, cataloging, cross-referencing, organizing everything into a timeline that would be undeniable in court. As the hours stretched on, the cold reality of the situation settled over me. This was no longer about anger or heartbreak. It was about control, precision, and the law. I reviewed Illinois statutes on the distribution of intimate images without consent, noting every clause that applied, imagining how a prosecutor or a judge might interpret each piece of evidence. I considered the possible consequences for the man who had sent the photos and for Kate, realizing that legal accountability would be the first step toward reclaiming order in my life. By the first light of dawn, I was mentally prepared. I gathered all the files onto a secure external hard drive and backed them up to a cloud server with encrypted access. Each folder was labeled, each image numbered, each message logged with meticulous accuracy. Nothing could be dismissed, nothing could be lost. The act of organizing the evidence became a ritual of control, a way to stabilize the chaos that had invaded my home. I contacted a lawyer with a reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency. someone known in Chicago for winning cases others thought hopeless. I arranged a meeting, carrying the weight of the night's work with me. In the office, I transferred every file, explaining nothing beyond the sequence and documentation. The lawyer examined each piece with clinical detachment, nodding at points that confirmed what I had suspected. The case was solid, nearly indisputable. A strategy was outlined, precise and calculated, designed to maximize protection of my interests and ensure accountability. I left the office with a cold certainty settling in my chest. There was no room for hesitation, no space for emotion to dictate action. Every step from here would need to be methodical, deliberate, and unemotional. The chaos of betrayal had been transformed into a set of defined actions, a legal and strategic framework that would guide the next stages. For the first time since the photos arrived, I felt control returning. It was not satisfaction or relief that I felt, but clarity. A clarity born from preparation, from structure, and from the unwavering certainty that I would not be blindsided again. I filed for divorce immediately, the papers crisp and final in my hands. The act itself felt procedural, almost mechanical, but it carried a weight that pressed down on me with every step I took afterward. Kate was notified at her office. She appeared unsettled, attempting gestures and movements that suggested negotiation or persuasion, but I followed the plan I had laid out. There was no room for deviation, no space for emotions to sway me. Every step was deliberate, measured, executed with the precision I had cultivated the night I documented the evidence. At home, I organized her belongings into boxes, labeling each with meticulous care. Clothing, books, personal items. All were separated and moved into the garage. The house, once a shared space, was slowly rearranged to reflect a new hierarchy. Control had shifted, the physical environment mirroring the clarity I had imposed mentally. Nothing could be left ambiguous, nothing unaccounted for. Every drawer, every shelf, every corner was examined, documented, and restored to order. Meanwhile, Jeffrey Morgan, the man who had intruded into my life through digital invasion, was summoned by law enforcement. He was charged and found guilty of distributing intimate images without consent. I observed each procedural step, noting dates, confirmations, and responses, maintaining detailed records of everything he did, everything Kate did, and how they both reacted under scrutiny. The process became a rhythm: documentation, observation, cataloging, ensuring that every motion and gesture would later serve as evidence of accountability. Throughout it all, I maintained a careful detachment. I watched Kate's movements, the way she handled her belongings, the subtle shifts in her posture and expression. I noted the tension in her hands, the hesitation in her steps, the way she looked at me when her plans to influence me failed. Each observation was filed internally, a mental log of behavior and consequence. Similarly, I tracked Jeffrey's responses to police procedures, his compliance and discomfort, and recorded them with the same objective focus. Even as the house emptied of her presence and the digital files reinforced her betrayal, a sense of control returned. The chaos of a broken marriage and shattered trust began to be replaced with order and methodical clarity. Each action I took, each decision made, reinforced the boundaries I had established. My family had fractured, but I could still dictate the terms of my own life. The return of control was neither relief nor satisfaction. It was a structural recalibration, a reclamation of stability amidst the wreckage. I moved through the days with deliberate purpose, cataloging, observing, and acting, ensuring that the consequences of betrayal were documented, enforceable, and complete. The rupture of trust remained, but its power to destabilize me was gradually diminished by precision, preparation, and meticulous attention to every detail of its aftermath. The court process unfolded with precision and speed. My lawyer presented every piece of evidence in a systematic, unflinching manner. The photographs meticulously labeled, the messages chronologically organized, the timeline of Kate's betrayals clearly documented. Each item was undeniable, leaving no room for argument or manipulation. I watched as the court absorbed the details, the judge examining the documentation with detached authority. There was no spectacle, no theatrics, only the clear weight of documented truth. The law moved deliberately, but it moved in my favor. The judgment was exacting. Kate was denied any claim to property or spousal support. The house remained mine, my savings untouched, and my legal rights reinforced. Jeffrey faced financial penalties and a strict restraining order, removing his ability to contact either of us. Each ruling reinforced the structure I had been building since the night I first saw the images. Justice, procedural and clinical, was being executed. I observed the consequences unfold quietly. Kate struggled to regain footing, navigating the sudden loss of income and assets. She was forced to move back with her parents, her independence compromised, her daily life rearranged by the legal outcome. Jeffrey, stripped of influence and restricted from any further contact, was similarly constrained, his freedom curtailed in measured increments. The effects were methodical, not chaotic. The balance of morality and legality had been restored through deliberate action rather than emotion. I cataloged every detail in my mind, noting the subtle shifts in their circumstances, the natural consequences of actions without interference. There was no satisfaction in vengeance, only the acknowledgement of a structure restored. The law had enforced the boundaries I had set, and my life had gained a new framework of stability. Each step had been premeditated, each outcome anticipated, each detail verified. The sense of control returned steadily, layering over the disruption that had once seemed insurmountable. I moved through the post-judgment days methodically. Correspondence with my lawyer ensured that the orders were enforced, that no loophole could be exploited. I monitored Kate's relocation and the legal compliance of Jeffrey, recording developments with the same precision as evidence. Every motion, every transaction, every adjustment to their lives became part of a larger record, a testament to accountability and consequence. The restoration of order was not triumphant in a dramatic sense, but it was absolute and undeniable. The moral and legal equilibrium, once fractured by betrayal and deceit, had been reestablished through measured, calculated action. As the weeks passed, I felt the full effect of this restoration. The house, the savings, the legal protections, all served as tangible markers of a life reclaimed. The disruption that had once threatened to consume me was now contained, structured, and rendered powerless. I remained alert, precise, and detached, understanding that the true measure of justice was the methodical application of consequence rather than emotional gratification. Through this process, I regained not just what had been taken, but the clarity to navigate the next stages of life with unwavering control. After selling the house, I removed every trace of the past, purging photographs, letters, and small tokens that had once anchored me to a life now defined by betrayal. The space I created was both literal and mental, a clearing in which I could begin again. I focused on my work with an intensity that left no room for distraction, completing tasks with meticulous attention, charting progress, and methodically advancing my career. My daily routines became deliberate exercises in discipline and control, from organizing my schedule to refining my professional goals. Each achievement, however small, felt like a reconstruction of order in a life previously fractured. Physical exercise became a ritual, a tangible way to reassert control over my body as well as my mind. I ran along the river walk in the cold Chicago mornings, noting the sharp bite of winter air against my skin, the rhythm of my heartbeat, and the cadence of each step. The discipline reinforced a sense of stability, and with each session, a quiet clarity settled over me. My mental focus sharpened, and a steady internal calm replaced the turbulence that had defined the months after the betrayal. At a charitable event in downtown Chicago, surrounded by formal attire and measured conversation, I met Victoria. Her presence was precise, self-assured, and efficient, the kind of measured confidence I recognized from my own routines. She was a physician, and her commitment to her work was evident in the subtle way she moved, in the careful attention to detail in her interactions. Our connection was gradual, built on observation, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding of boundaries. Trust developed quietly, without drama or sudden declarations, a contrast to the chaos of my previous marriage. As our relationship progressed, I maintained the same principles I had applied to every aspect of my life since the betrayal: clarity, honesty, and methodical consideration. I established routines, shared responsibilities, and ensured that each decision was deliberate, measured, and mutually agreed upon. Emotional intimacy grew from consistent actions rather than declarations, and support was demonstrated in concrete ways. The stability I had sought was no longer an abstraction, but a living framework, reinforced through daily practice and conscientious attention. The lessons from the past guided me. Every moment with Victoria, every choice I made, was informed by the clarity that moral control and measured action provide. I understood that the consequences of betrayal were irreversible, but the response to them could shape the future. Over time, I felt a deepening sense of emotional resilience, a certainty in the knowledge that my life was now insulated from chaos by discipline, awareness, and careful planning. Each morning, I woke with a sense of purpose. Each evening, a quiet satisfaction in the structure I had cultivated. The past existed only as a reference point, a reminder of what could occur without vigilance, but it no longer dictated my state of mind or the direction of my life. 5 years had passed since the chaos had upended my life. Kate remained living with her parents, her independence curtailed, navigating the small routines of a modest retail job that barely covered expenses. The consequences of her choices were evident in every detail. Her home was cramped and quiet, her days dictated by necessity rather than ambition. Her social presence diminished. I occasionally learned of her circumstances through mutual acquaintances, noting the subtle unraveling of the life she had once shared with me. The patterns of behavior that had led to betrayal had finally exacted their toll. Jeffrey, too, had faced the fallout of his actions. The dissolution of his marriage, combined with the legal repercussions of his offenses, stripped him of nearly all financial stability and social influence. His attempts to rebuild were gradual and halting, each step constrained by past misdeeds and the lingering consequences of poor decisions. Observing their decline was not an act of satisfaction, but a confirmation of the causal structure I had long internalized. Actions have predictable outcomes, and violations of trust carry enduring consequences. My own life had taken a markedly different trajectory. Victoria and I had established a family, our routines measured and deliberate, our household built on mutual respect and trust. Our child arrived, a tangible embodiment of stability and continuity. Each day followed a rhythm of work, exercise, and careful attention to both professional and personal responsibilities. I continued to advance in my career, applying the same rigor and discipline that had governed every stage of my life since the betrayal. Physical and mental health were maintained through methodical practice, each choice deliberate, each action aligned with long-term goals rather than impulse. The lessons from the past had crystallized into principles I applied consistently. Deception and selfishness were forces that could destroy everything I had built, but honesty, preparation, and adherence to law and structure restored order. Every decision was filtered through these lessons. Investments, relationships, work projects, and even minor daily choices were approached with calculated awareness. The freedom I felt was not rooted in spontaneity but in security, in the confidence that my life would remain resilient against disorder. As I observed my daily routine, from the quiet morning runs along the lakefront to evenings spent reviewing work and caring for my family, I recognized a clarity that had once been absent. Past chaos no longer had dominion over my thoughts or decisions. It existed as reference points, as data informing choices rather than dictating outcomes. The future was a structured landscape, one I navigated with foresight and intentionality. Moral justice, once delayed, had aligned with natural consequences, reinforcing the value of measured, disciplined action. The past remained visible only as a contrast to the life I now maintained. Betrayal and recklessness had led to ruin for others, while my own adherence to law, order, and personal discipline had created stability, prosperity, and emotional resilience. Each day, each routine, each accomplishment affirmed the framework I had constructed. The culmination of these years was a life protected from chaos, enriched by deliberate choices, and guided by a steadfast commitment to integrity. In the end, the pattern was clear. Moral discipline and careful planning did not just repair what had been broken. They created a life capable of enduring, thriving, and sustaining happiness, where the mistakes of the past served only as foundations for wisdom rather than chains of regret.